We now know where Marissa Mayer's been. She's hanging out at Google. Well, sort of.
That's weird.
She's renting her old Google office.
Well, I don't know, was it her old office? It was the original Palo Alto office, I think.
Oh, Google's old office in Palo Alto.
It's Google's old office.
Oh, how
I think
funny.
It's that fabled one in downtown Palo Alto, a lot of places.
She said she'd worked there because she said every time I go up the steps, it comes back. Big article. This is actually not the one to look at. Let's go back to the New York Times article because this is a rehashed version of the big article in the New York Times about her. And yeah, she says, let me see if I can find the quote. Because she says every time she goes up the steps, it reminds her of the early days. There it is. By the way, great picture of Marissa Mayer.
Yeah.
She looks relaxed, happy. She talks a lot about Yahoo. She said, I had high hopes of turning around Yahoo, but ultimately it was a legacy business, and all I could do is slow down the death.
Absolutely true. It was the last old media business.
Yeah. She is looking. I guess this is kind of to be expected to invest. I guess and be a startup person.
Lumi Labs.
Yeah, and Lumi is a Finnish word that means snow. She says I like snow a lot. It's a good name.
That was a silly little quote. I'm like, and I just love snow. I'm like,
huh?
Okay.
So this is actually the office, she said, where I started my career in 1999. It's also where PayPal started, so there's a lot of good juju here. Coming back, it reminds me of what Google felt like in these early moments. I remember, this was a telling statement, I remember running up those steps because if you didn't get here fast enough on Saturday morning, somebody in the world was going to get worse search results, and it might change their life for the worse. Wow. I'm not running up anybody's steps on Saturday morning.
That's like the old Disney joke. If you don't come to work on Saturday, don't bother coming to work on Sunday.
That's a good joke. She talks about Larry and Sergey in the early days. I'm glad the Times asked her this. She says Larry and Sergey just yelled at us until we became what they needed us to become and get done what they needed to be done. And so I said, look, she was employee 20, I think, right? Look, I'm just going to rinse and repeat that, hopefully with less yelling. We ultimately brought in management coaches and all kinds of mentoring. Wow. She said, I always knew what Larry and Sergey wanted. I knew what good looked like to them. And so I never got discouraged by them saying, wait, I don't think this is ready, or I think this is overly ready.
Overly ready?
Overly
Google has
ready.
Never released an overly ready product in its life.
At a startup, you never really know when you should launch something. So Google built the philosophy of launching early and often, try things out, see what works. She said the first phase of the company, when you're tens of people, the idea itself either attracts people or it doesn't. People are there because they think the problem you're trying to solve is just that important. Then, getting from 100 employees to 1,000, you have to be very careful. You don't want to, this was really interesting. You don't want to pay them too much because you don't want somebody who's there for the wrong reasons. You want to get people who are really aligned with the mission. You make sure they're fairly compensated, but not necessarily motivated by that compensation.
That's not true anymore, is it?
No. Well, she says that's up to 1,000. She says then around 1,000 people, the culture and the mission become self-reinforcing. At Google, I always ask new people, why did you come? When we were about 1,200 people, all of a sudden, for the first time I actually heard the answer, I came for the culture. She said, I had a strategy both at Google and Yahoo of meet salaries, not beat salaries. It's the trade-off between, this is a great line, it's the trade-off between mercenaries and missionaries. You want a true believer is not somebody who's there for the money. Mercenaries and missionaries. I love that. As for Yahoo, she said, well, I'd been working at Google for 13 years. She doesn't mention the fact that she was kind of demoted or pushed aside a little bit right before she went to Yahoo. I'd been on search for 10 of those years, just recently made the change over to focus on maps. Maybe this is her way of saying that. And I was like, I'm just not sure I want to be like the 50-year-old search girl. I always had huge respect for Yahoo as a company. When we were here in this office, we dreamed of maybe getting the Yahoo contract, maybe one day powering Yahoo search. In 1999, Yahoo was the internet. She said,
there's the problem. There's the entire problem.
In 1999. And I knew that while there were a lot of things going wrong for the board and leadership at Yahoo, there were a lot of really good people still there working on products. She wanted, she says, to return it to the preeminence in its users' daily lives where it used to be, where people were on Yahoo for half an hour to many hours a day. I'm proud of what we achieved at Yahoo. That said, we had a quickly decaying legacy business, and all we really managed to do was offset the declines. She talks a little bit about the activist Dan Loeb and Carl Icahn and how that was really focused on short-sightedness. And she was mad because they forced Yahoo to sell some of their Alibaba stake, which would have been worth a lot more had they held on to it. She tells an anecdote about building something with her son with magnetiles. Stacey, you probably know
those are fun.
Yeah, it's not Lego, but what is it? It's like magnetic Lego?
They're like plastic-covered magnets that you build stuff with. I'm like, they're flat. You build things. I'm like, deep. They look like
deep. Yeah. She said, we built this giant kind of castle complex, and it collapsed, and my son was crestfallen. I stopped and said, son, this is a teaching moment. There's nothing to be upset about. We built it, and it worked once, and we'll just rebuild it.
Kid, fail fast. Fail often.
Yeah.
You're going to regret those words.
She said that was one of my...
Just don't become a civil engineer.
Yeah, right. Because you don't want bridges to fail even once. She said, I would say one of my key learnings for Yahoo is that timing is everything. We can make the products really good, but regaining the contextual relevance that was afforded to Yahoo in 1999 and the early 2000s was difficult. Difficult, absolutely. She said an interesting thing about Me Too. She said, as important as these conversations are, I hope we're able to have them in a concentrated way, fix the problems, and then move on. Because what I don't want to do is dissuade the next set of leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives from even entering the field. I don't want us 15 years from now to turn around and be like, wait, how come there's so few women VPs at these companies? Oh, right, because in the summer of 2018, all this Me Too stuff was happening. It caused people to say, I'm not getting in that business.
Okay, Me Too is everywhere. That's just asinine.
Okay.
There's no business set aside from this yet.
That's a good point.
Come on, Marissa.
It's not just the tech industry. Even podcasting.
Even in podcasting. What are some of your tips for perseverance when the chips are stacked against you? Develop a thick skin. Bradley Cooper, the actor, once said, if you ever want to feel really, really bad about yourself, go read about yourself online. And then she quotes the last line of a book I bet you've read, your daughter, Rosie Revere, Engineer. Life may have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. End scene. So that's Marissa Meyer back at it, and I guess she's
doing an interview.
It's actually,
I've always liked Marissa and respected Marissa, and I wish her by all means the best.
What I loved about it was very
smart.
colloquial and not forced. Not she didn't hold back.
There was no PR person.
No, it was very genuine. It was good.
This is her.
I thought.
I agree.